My millionaire husband held my puppy hostage for a divorce settlement, not knowing what I would do for my dog. I stared at my phone screen, my hands trembling so hard I almost dropped it. There, in crystal clear high definition, was a photo that made my entire world collapse in a single second. A woman I had never seen before. Blonde, tan, wearing a designer bikini that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, was holding my dog, my Baxter, my golden retriever with the crooked left ear and the habit of sleeping with his paw on my chest every single night, like he was making sure I was still breathing. The caption underneath that photo felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Daddy brought the puppy for me to play with. I think I'm keeping him for myself. #new baby, #gift of love. My husband had given my dog to his mistress. The room started spinning. My wine glass slipped from my other hand and shattered on the hardwood floor, red liquid spreading like blood across the white oak planks I had personally selected and installed 2 years ago. Baxter would have come running at that sound, ready to investigate, ready to make sure I was okay. But Baxter was not here. Baxter was in the arms of a stranger, 60 miles away, while my husband told me he was working late on a deal. I felt something crack deep inside my chest. Not my heart. That would come later, in waves, when I was alone in the dark. This was something more fundamental. This was the sound of trust shattering. This was the moment I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life was a carefully constructed lie. And I was about to find out that the betrayal I was looking at was only the beginning of the nightmare. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Now, let's continue. Let me take you back 5 years to a version of myself I barely recognize anymore. A version that still believed in fairy tales and second chances, and the idea that love could conquer anything if you just worked hard enough at it. I met Grant Ashford on a Thursday afternoon in October at the Merchandise Mart in Chicago.
I was 28 years old, working for a small interior design firm called Aria Interiors, and we had been hired to stage model units for a luxury high-rise development in River North. I was arranging throw pillows on a charcoal sectional when he walked into the unit, and I swear the entire energy of the room shifted. Grant was 34, 6'2", with dark hair that was just starting to gray at the temples in that distinguished way that makes men look more successful instead of just older. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford seat that fit him like it had been painted on, and he had this smile, God, that smile, that made you feel like you were the only person in the world who mattered. He introduced himself as the listing agent for the building. He walked through the space slowly, nodding appreciatively at the staging, making small observations about the color palette and the flow of the furniture. Then he stopped in front of me and said something I will never forget. He said, "I can tell you actually care about this. Most designers just fill rooms with expensive things and call it luxury, but you are creating a feeling. That is rare." I was hooked, just like that. We went to coffee that same day. Coffee turned into dinner at RPM Italian. Dinner turned into a weekend in Milwaukee where we walked along the lakefront and talked about our dreams. Grant told me he had grown up in a working-class neighborhood on the South Side, that his father had been a factory worker who drank too much and died too young, that he had put himself through community college and then Northwestern's real estate program by working 3 jobs. He said he understood what it meant to want more, to fight for more, to refuse to settle for the life you were born into. I told him about my own story, about growing up in Connecticut as the daughter of Jonathan and Victoria Hartwell, about how my father had built Hartwell and Associates from the ground up, how he had died suddenly of a heart attack when I was 21, how my mother had stepped into his shoes without hesitation and run that company like the empire it was. I told him I had moved to Chicago to prove I could make it on my own, without my family name, without their money, just me and my work ethic and my eye for design. Grant listened to me like every word I said was poetry. He asked questions. He remembered details. 3 months into dating, he knew how I took my coffee, knew that I hated cilantro, knew that I cried during dog adoption commercials, knew that my biggest fear was being invisible. He proposed to me on a cold January evening at the top of the Willis Tower. We rode the elevator up to the sky deck just before sunset, and when we stepped out onto the glass ledge overlooking the city, he got down on one knee and pulled out a ring, a stunning princess-cut diamond set in platinum, and asked me to build a life with him. I said yes before he even finished the question. We got married 10 months later in Aspen, Colorado. It was a small ceremony, just 20 guests, held at a private estate with the mountains as our backdrop. Grant said he wanted it intimate, romantic, just us and the people who mattered most. Looking back now, I realize he wanted it small because he was already building a life full of secrets, and secrets need small spaces to hide in. My mother did not approve of the marriage. Victoria Hartwell is not the type of woman you disobey lightly, and she is certainly not the type of woman who hides her opinions. She is elegant and controlled and devastatingly intelligent, and she looked at Grant with the kind of skepticism that most people reserve for used car salesmen. The warning signs were there from the very beginning. I just refused to see them. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private dining room at the Little Nell. My mother had flown in early to oversee the arrangements, and Grant had been drinking scotch since the afternoon. I remember stepping away to take a phone call from the florist, and when I came back, I saw Grant leaning in close to my mother at the bar. Too close. His hand was on her wrist, his voice low and familiar. I asked my mother about it later that night. She waved it off with a tight smile and told me not to worry, that Grant had simply had too much to drink. But I saw the way she looked at him for the rest of the weekend, like she was cataloging something, like she was waiting for him to confirm a suspicion she already had. Years later, she would tell me the truth, that Grant had suggested they work together on a development project in Chicago, that his hand had lingered on her wrist just a beat too long, that his smile had been too familiar, too flirtatious, too calculated, that he had looked at her not like his future mother-in-law, but like a mark, like an opportunity. My mother rejected him with the kind of icy professionalism that could freeze fire, but she never told me, not then. She said later that she did not want to ruin my wedding day, that she hoped she was wrong about him, that she wanted me to be happy more than she wanted to be right. But she was not wrong. She never is. For the first year of our marriage, I convinced myself that everything was perfect. We bought a stunning 3-bedroom townhouse in Lincoln Park with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a tree-lined street. I painted the walls in soft neutrals and filled the space with mid-century furniture and plants and all the little touches that turned a house into a home. Grant worked long hours at his firm, closing deals on commercial properties and luxury developments, and I worked from home, building my freelance client base one project at a time. We had dinner parties with his colleagues. We spent weekends exploring the city. We talked about starting a family someday, maybe in a year or two, once we were more established. It felt like we were building something together, like we were a team. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Grant started traveling more. At first, it was 2 or 3 days a week, business trips to Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Detroit. Then it became 4 days, then 5. He said the market was booming, that he was closing bigger deals, that the travel was temporary, just until he built up enough of a portfolio to work remotely. I believed him because I wanted to, because the alternative was too painful to consider. He would come home late on Friday nights, smelling like airports and rental cars and expensive cologne. He would kiss me on the forehead, tell me he was exhausted, and fall asleep on the couch before I could even ask him about his week. On the weekends, he was distracted, always on his phone, always checking emails, always one meeting away from being fully present. I started to feel like a ghost in my own home, like I was living with a man who was physically there, but emotionally somewhere else entirely. I told myself it was just a phase, that all marriages went through this, that once things settled down, we would reconnect. Then, 2 years ago, on my 30th birthday, Grant came home with a surprise. A puppy. I opened the door to find him standing there with the biggest grin on his face and a tiny golden retriever puppy cradled in his arms. The puppy could not have been more than 8 weeks old. He had oversized paws and floppy ears and eyes that were too big for his little face. And when Grant placed him in my arms, that puppy looked up at me like I was his whole world. Grant handed me a folder with the breeder's paperwork and a receipt. His name was on everything: his credit card, his signature, legal proof of ownership. "Happy birthday, baby," he said. "Now you will never be lonely when I'm traveling." I should have heard the warning in those words. I should have questioned why he felt the need to give me a living creature to fill the void his absence was creating. I should have noticed that the receipt was in his name, not ours. That even this gift, this beautiful, innocent gift, came with fine print. But all I saw was this perfect little puppy who needed me, and God, I needed him too. I named him Baxter. Baxter because it sounded strong and loyal and dependable, all the things I wanted in my life. I set up a dog bed in the corner of our bedroom and bought toys and treats and a little collar with his name engraved on a brass tag. I trained him. I fed him. I took him on long walks through the park every morning before I started work. I taught him to sit and stay and come when called. Baxter became my constant companion. He slept in our bed when Grant was traveling, curled up against my side with his head on the pillow next to mine. He sat by my feet while I worked on design mock-ups and mood boards. He waited by the front door every evening around 6 o'clock, tail wagging even on the nights when I told him Daddy was not coming home tonight. I poured all my loneliness into that dog, all my unspoken frustration and sadness and fear. And Baxter loved me back with the kind of unconditional devotion that humans are incapable of. He did not care if I was successful or beautiful or interesting. He just cared that I was there. Grant's travel schedule got worse. 5 days a week turned into 6. Sometimes he would not come home for 10 days straight. He said he was closing major deals in Minneapolis, Nashville, Miami. He said he was building a reputation. He said the sacrifices would be worth it. I stopped asking questions because I was afraid of the answers. I stopped reaching out to friends because I was ashamed to admit how lonely I was. I stopped calling my mother because I did not want to hear her say, "I told you so." I just focused on Baxter, on my work, on getting through each day without falling apart. And then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Tuesday in late September, one of those perfect autumn evenings in Chicago where the air is crisp and the leaves are just starting to turn gold and everything feels alive with possibility. Grant had texted me around 4 o'clock to say he was working late. A client from Miami was in town and they were closing a deal on a mixed-use development in the West Loop. He said not to wait up. He said he would probably crash at his office. I did not question it. By that point, questioning had become exhausting. I made myself a Caesar salad and poured a glass of Pinot Grigio and curled up on the couch with Baxter sprawled across my lap, his head resting on my thigh, his breathing slow and steady. I had my laptop open with a design proposal I was working on, but I was not really focused. I was just going through the motions, the way I had been for months. I picked up my phone and opened Instagram. Not for any particular reason, just something to do, just a way to fill the silence. I scrolled past photos of friends on vacation, influencers selling skincare, motivational quotes superimposed on sunsets. Nothing that mattered, nothing that caught my attention. And then the algorithm did what algorithms do. It suggested a post from someone I did not follow, Tiffany Lawson. The username was @TiffanyLivesLux. Her profile picture was a selfie taken in front of a private jet. Her bio read, "Living my best life, lifestyle, travel, beauty, blessed, DM for collabs." She had 153,000 followers and a feed full of sponsored posts for teeth whitening kits and protein shakes and waist trainers. She looked like every other Instagram influencer. Blonde hair with extensions, spray tan, lip fillers, the kind of manufactured perfection that costs thousands of dollars to maintain. The post that Instagram suggested to me had been posted 3 hours earlier. The photo showed Tiffany standing by a pool at what looked like a luxury resort. She was wearing a leopard print bikini and oversized sunglasses, and she was holding a dog. Not just any dog. Baxter. My Baxter. I stared at that photo, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. There was no mistaking him. The crooked left ear, the little white patch on his chest, the way his tongue hung out when he was happy, that was my dog, in the arms of a stranger. The caption underneath made my blood turn to ice. Daddy brought the puppy for me to play with. I think I'm keeping him for myself. Hashtag golden retriever, hashtag puppy love. I felt the wine glass slip from my hand. I heard it shatter against the floor. I watched red wine spread across the white oak like blood. But I could not move. I could not breathe. I could not think. Baxter jumped off the couch at the sound, startled, looking at me with concern. No, not Baxter. Baxter was not here. Baxter was 60 miles away with a woman I had never met. I clicked on Tiffany's profile with shaking hands and started scrolling, digging, investigating, looking for proof that this was real and not some nightmare I was about to wake up from. 2 weeks ago, a photo of her at Gibson's Steakhouse tagged in the Gold Coast, the same restaurant where Grant told me he had a client dinner. In the background of the photo, barely visible, was a man's hand holding a whiskey glass. I recognized the watch. A Rolex Submariner, the one I had bought Grant for our first anniversary. 3 weeks ago, a selfie at the Peninsula Hotel lobby. Grant told me he was staying there for a real estate conference. In the photo, reflected in the window behind her, was a man in a dark suit, tall, dark hair. It could have been anyone, but I knew it was not. A month ago, a sunset photo at Montrose Beach. The caption read, "Perfect evening with my favorite person." The date was September 8th. The same night, Grant said he was too tired to come to my mother's birthday dinner in Connecticut. 2 months ago, a photo at Maple and Ash, a high-end steakhouse in the Gold Coast. She was wearing a black cocktail dress and holding a glass of champagne. The caption, "Date night vibes." The date was July 15th, Grant's birthday. The birthday I spent alone because he said he had an emergency meeting in Detroit. Every lie, every excuse, every late night and every missed dinner, and every time he said he was too busy or too tired or too far away. They were all there, time-stamped and geotagged and tagged with little heart emojis, laid out in chronological order like a public diary of my husband's double life. I scrolled back further. 6 months, 8 months, a year. She had been in his life for over a year, maybe longer, and I had been too blind or too afraid to see it. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by broken glass and spilled wine, staring at my phone until my eyes burned. I clicked on every photo. I read every caption. I studied every location tag. I was looking for proof, but I was also looking for an explanation, a reason, a justification for why the man I loved had chosen to destroy me so completely. I heard the front door open, heavy footsteps in the hallway, keys jingling, Grant whistling something under his breath. He walked into the living room, loosening his tie, looking as casual and relaxed as if he had just come home from a normal day at the office. He saw the broken glass, the wine stain, me sitting on the floor with my phone in my hand. He frowned. "Layla, what happened? Are you okay?" I did not say anything. I just turned my phone toward him and watched his face. For a split second, just one, I saw panic flicker in his eyes, a momentary loss of control. Then it was gone, replaced by that easy, charming smile that I had fallen in love with 5 years ago. He laughed, actually laughed. "Layla, come on, it's not what you think." I stood up slowly, my legs shaking, my entire body vibrating with rage. "Then tell me what it is, Grant. Tell me why your girlfriend is holding my dog and calling you daddy." He sighed like I was being dramatic, like I was the problem, like I was the one making this difficult. She is not my girlfriend. She is just someone I have been seeing. It is not serious. Not serious. I had spent 3 years sleeping next to this man, 3 years cooking dinners he did not come home to eat, 3 years believing we were building a future together. And he reduced his affair to not serious, like it was a gym membership or a hobby he picked up on weekends. How long? My voice cracked. I hated myself for that. He shrugged. I don't know, a year, maybe? Layla, look, I am sorry. I did not mean for you to find out like this. But honestly, things between us have not been great for a while. You know that. So you cheated. You cheated and you took my dog to her house and you let her post photos like she owns him. He is not your dog, Grant said, his tone shifting, colder now, more calculated. Legally, he is mine. I bought him. The receipt is in my name. And honestly, Tiffany has been saying how much she would love a dog. She has a big backyard, a pool. She is home more than you are. I felt the floor drop out from under me. This was not an apology. This was not even a fight. This was a negotiation. You cannot be serious, I whispered. I am dead serious. If you want a divorce, fine, but Baxter stays with me. Your choice. I stared at him, this man I thought I knew, and realized I was looking at a complete stranger. Someone who could weaponize my love for an innocent animal. Someone who could stand there, calm and composed, and threaten to give my dog to his mistress just to punish me for being hurt. Get out, I said, my voice barely audible. Layla, get out. I screamed it so loud that it tore through my throat, left me gasping for air. Grant just smiled. That same smile. That same goddamn smile. He walked over to Baxter, who had been hiding under the dining room table during the confrontation, and clipped the leash onto his collar. Come on, buddy. Let's go for a ride. Baxter looked at me, confused. His tail was not wagging. He was whining softly like he knew something was wrong, like he was asking me to fix it. Grant, no, please. Not Baxter. Please. I was begging now, tears streaming down my face, my voice breaking into sobs. He paused at the door, his hand on the knob, Baxter's leash wrapped around his wrist. He looked back at me one last time, and the cruelty in his eyes was something I will never forget. File for divorce if you want, Layla, but if you do, I am keeping him. Your choice. Then he walked out. The door slammed behind him and I collapsed. I sobbed so hard I could not breathe. I screamed into the empty house until my throat was raw. I crawled across the floor to Baxter's bed in the corner and curled up with his stuffed duck, the one he slept with every night, and I cried until I had nothing left. At 2 a.m, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp and alert. Layla, what happened? I could barely speak. He took Baxter. Mom, he took Baxter. There was a pause. Then Victoria Hartwell's voice, cold and steady. Pack a bag. Come home to Connecticut. Right now. I can't leave without him. You are not leaving without him, I promise you. But right now, I need you to breathe and pack a bag and get on the next flight. Can you do that? I nodded, even though she could not see me. Yes. Good. I will send a car. Do not engage with Grant. Do not answer his calls. Do not sign anything. Do you understand? Yes. We are going to fix this, Layla. That man has no idea who he is dealing with. She hung up. I sat there in the dark, clutching Baxter's toy, feeling like my entire world had been ripped apart. I did not know how my mother was going to fix this. I did not know if it was even possible. But for the first time in hours, I felt a flicker of something other than despair. I felt rage. The next morning, Grant's lawyer called. I was still in Chicago, waiting for the car my mother had sent. I had not slept, I had not eaten, I had just sat on the couch, staring at my phone, refreshing Tiffany's Instagram page over and over again, looking for new photos of Baxter. When the phone rang, I almost did not answer, but I saw the name on the caller ID, Kellerman and Associates. I picked up. Mrs. Ashford, this is Douglas Kellerman. I represent your husband, Grant Ashford. He has asked me to reach out regarding a potential dissolution of marriage. My hands went numb. He wants a divorce. He wants to proceed in a manner that is fair and expedient for both parties. He would like to meet with you at my office to discuss terms. Are you available tomorrow afternoon? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. But instead, I said, very calmly, "Tell Grants I will be there." "Excellent. 2:00. I will send you the address." He hung up before I could respond. I called my mother immediately. "He wants to meet tomorrow to discuss terms." Victoria's voice was ice. "Do not go alone. I am flying to Chicago tonight. We will go together." "And Layla?" "Yeah?" "Bring a recorder. I want every word he says documented." 4 days later, I sat across from Grant in a sterile conference room on the 38th floor of a glass high-rise in the Loop. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, leather chairs, and a table so polished I could see my reflection in it. My mother sat next to me, perfectly composed in a slate-gray suit, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She had not said a word since we walked in. She was just watching, waiting. Grant sat across from us, looking rested and confident in a navy suit. His lawyer, Douglas Kellerman, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a Brioni suit, sat beside him, tapping a Mont Blanc pen against a leather portfolio. Kellerman opened the meeting with a practiced smile. "Thank you both for coming. Let's keep this civil and straightforward. My client is willing to make this process as painless as possible for everyone involved." I wanted to laugh. Painless. The man who had ripped my life apart wanted this to be painless. Kellerman slid a folder across the table. "These are the terms my client is proposing." I opened the folder with trembling hands. $50,000, cash, to be paid within 72 hours. I would waive any and all claims to alimony, spousal support, or division of marital assets. I would sign a non-disclosure agreement stating that the marriage ended amicably and that I would not make any public or private statements, verbal or written, that could damage Grant Ashford's professional reputation. I would sign an affidavit declaring that Grant Ashford was a faithful, supportive, and loving husband throughout the duration of our marriage, and in exchange for all of this, Grant would return Baxter to me. I stared at the words until they blurred. "You want me to lie?" Grant leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his voice soft and almost kind. "Layla, I want us both to move on with dignity. 50,000 is nothing to your family. Your mother could write that check in her sleep. This is not about the money. This is about being smart." "This is about protecting yourself," I said, my voice shaking. He did not deny it. "I have investors. I have deals in progress worth tens of millions of dollars. I have a reputation that took me 15 years to build from nothing. If you go around telling people I cheated, if you drag my name through the mud, it could cost me everything. So yes, I am protecting myself. That is what smart people do." My mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. "You are asking my daughter to pay $50,000 for a dog that is emotionally hers, sign away any financial security she is entitled to, and lie on a legal document to protect a man who betrayed her in the most humiliating way possible. Is that correct?" Kellerman shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Hartwell, the dog is legally Mr. Ashford's property. He is being more than generous." "Generous?" my mother repeated, her tone dripping with contempt. "You call extortion generous." Grant's jaw tightened. "Call it whatever you want, Victoria, but those are the terms. Layla has 72 hours to decide. If she does not sign, I keep the dog. Tiffany has already said she would love to have him permanently. She has a trainer lined up and everything." Something inside me snapped. I looked at Grant, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time. Not the man I had fallen in love with, Not the man I had believed him to be, but the man he actually was. Cruel, manipulative, empty. And I realized that I had been so focused on saving my marriage, on saving us, that I had lost myself completely. "I will sign," I said quietly. My mother's head whipped toward me. "Layla!" "I will sign," I repeated, my voice stronger now. "I will pay the $50,000. I will waive alimony. I will sign the NDA. I will sign the affidavit. Whatever you want, Grant. Just give me back my dog." Grant smiled. That same smug, victorious smile. "Smart girl." Kellerman pulled out the contracts. "We will schedule the signing for Friday at 10 a.m. Bring a cashier's check for $50,000 made out to Grant Ashford. Once the documents are signed and the payment is received, the dog will be returned to you." I stood up, my legs shaking. My mother stood beside me, her face unreadable. As we walked toward the door, Grant called out, "Layla." I stopped, but did not turn around. For what it is worth, I really did love you, once. I did not respond. I just walked out of that office, my mother's hand on my back, feeling like I had just sold my soul to the devil. We rode the elevator down in silence. When we reached the lobby, my mother finally spoke. "You are not signing those papers." I turned to her, tears streaming down my face. "Mom, I do not have a choice. You always have a choice." She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "And you are about to learn that men like Grant Ashford do not win. They just do not know they have already lost." She put the phone to her ear. "Marcus, it is Victoria Hartwell. I need you in Chicago, tonight. I am sending you an address. Bring everything you can find on Grant Ashford. Everything." She hung up and looked at me, her expression fierce and determined. "We are going to destroy him, Layla, and you are going to get your dog back. I promise you that." 48 hours later, a man named Marcus Delgado sat in my mother's suite at the Four Seasons Chicago, laying out documents across the coffee table like he was preparing a murder case. Marcus was my mother's private investigator, former FBI, early 50s, gray hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had worked for Hartwell and Associates for over a decade, handling everything from background checks on potential business partners to tracking down fraud in construction bids. If there was dirt to be found, Marcus found it. And he had found a lot of dirt on Grant Ashford. I sat on the edge of the couch, exhausted and numb, watching Marcus sort through file folders with clinical efficiency. My mother sat in the armchair across from him, perfectly composed, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Marcus did not waste time with pleasantries. He opened the first folder and slid a document toward me. "Grant Ashford is under federal investigation," he said flatly. "Wire fraud, money laundering, racketeering. The FBI has been building a case for 8 months." I stared at him, my brain struggling to process the words. "What?" He pulled out another document, a bank statement, then another, and another. "Your husband has been running a real estate scheme targeting foreign investors. He sells commercial properties that do not exist. Fake listings, fake contracts, fake inspections. He collects deposits, usually between $500,000 and $2 million per investor, wires the money through a series of shell companies registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands, and the buyers never see a dime." My hands went numb. Marcus continued, his tone matter-of-fact. "He has also been inflating renovation costs on legitimate projects and pocketing the difference. For example, he told an investor group that a mixed-use development in the West Loop required $4 million in upgrades. The actual cost was $2.1 million. He kept the rest." He slid another document across the table. His business partner, a man named Eric Donovan, realized what was happening 6 months ago. Donovan went to the FBI and cut a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. He gave them everything: bank records, emails, recorded phone calls, text messages. The feds have been building an airtight case while they track down every investor and every dollar. I felt like I was falling. Why have they not arrested him yet? Because they wanted to make sure they had everyone in the chain. Grant was not working alone. He had a lawyer who helped set up the shell companies, an accountant who laundered the money, a real estate appraiser who created the fake valuations. The FBI wanted all of them. And now they do. The warrant was signed yesterday morning. My mother leaned forward. Which means Grant knows the walls are closing in. Marcus nodded. Exactly. That is why he is desperate. He needs cash. Fast. He is either going to try to flee the country or use the money to hire a defense attorney who can cut a deal. Either way, he is drowning, and he is trying to take whatever he can on his way down. I stared at the documents, my mind reeling. He was using me the whole time, our entire marriage. Not just you, my mother said quietly. He tried to use me, too. That is why he approached me at the rehearsal dinner. He wanted access to Hartwell and Associates. He wanted me to invest in one of his fake developments. When I rejected him, he moved on, but he never stopped looking for ways to exploit your connection to my company. I felt sick. So what do we do? Marcus pulled out his phone. The FBI wants to arrest him in the act of receiving money. If you go through with the signing on Friday and bring the $50,000 cashier's check, they will arrest him the moment he accepts it. It will tie him directly to extortion and give them another charge to add to the pile.
You want me to set him up, I said slowly. I want you to cooperate with a federal investigation, Marcus corrected. The FBI has been watching him for months. They know about Tiffany. They know about the dog. They know about the divorce meeting. They are just waiting for the right moment to move. My mother looked at me, her expression unreadable. This is your choice, Layla. You do not have to do this. We can walk away. Let the FBI handle it on their own timeline. But if you want your dog back, if you want to watch that man answer for what he did to you, this is how we do it. I thought about Baxter. I thought about Grant's smile when he walked out with my dog. I thought about every lie, every manipulation, every moment he made me feel small and stupid and worthless. I will do it, I said. I will set him up. Marcus nodded approvingly. Good. The FBI will have agents in place. You will not be in any danger. Just act normal, bring the check, sign nothing until he accepts the money. Once he does, they will move in. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. You are stronger than you know, Layla. And after Friday, that man will never hurt you again. Friday morning arrived, cold and gray, the kind of Chicago weather that makes you want to stay in bed forever. But I got up. I got dressed. I put on jeans and a sweater and pulled my hair back in a ponytail. I wanted to look defeated, broken. I wanted Grant to think he had won. It was not hard to fake. My mother and I drove to the bank and picked up the cashier's check, $50,000 made out to Grant Ashford. I stared at it in the car, this piece of paper that represented so much more than money. It represented my dignity, my trust, my belief that love was supposed to mean something. We arrived at Kellerman's office at 9:45. The building was a glass high-rise in the Loop, all steel and cold professionalism. We took the elevator to the 38th floor in silence. When we walked into the conference room, Grant was already there. He was wearing a charcoal suit and a light blue tie, and he looked calm, confident, like this was just another business meeting. And then I saw Baxter. My dog was lying on the floor next to Grant's chair, his leash wrapped around the armrest. When Baxter saw me, he jumped to his feet and started pulling toward me, whining, his tail wagging so hard his whole body shook. "Baxter, sit," Grant said sharply, yanking the leash. My dog sat, but he kept looking at me, confused and desperate. It took everything in me not to run to him. Kellerman gestured to the conference table. "Shall we begin?" We sat down, my mother on my left, Grant and his lawyer across from us. The contracts were already laid out, ready to be signed. Kellerman slid the papers toward me. "Mrs. Ashford, if you have the payment, we can finalize this today." I reached into my purse and pulled out the cashier's check. My hand was shaking as I placed it on the table. Grant smiled, that same smug, victorious smile.
He reached for the check. And that was when the door burst open. 4 men in dark suits walked in, badges clipped to their belts. FBI. The lead agent, a tall man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp, cold eyes, looked directly at Grant. Grant Ashford, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit racketeering, and extortion. The color drained from Grant's face. What? No, this is a mistake. No mistake, Mr. Ashford. The agent pulled out a pair of handcuffs. We have been tracking your accounts for 8 months. Your partner gave us everything. Bank records, emails, recorded phone calls. You are done. Grant's lawyer stood up, his face pale. My client has rights. Your client has the right to remain silent, the agent said coldly, which I strongly suggest he use. 2 agents pulled Grant to his feet and cuffed his hands behind his back. He looked at me, his eyes wild, desperate, pleading. Tell them this is insane. Tell them what, Grant? My voice was steady now, strong. Tell them you tried to extort me for $50,000? Tell them you blackmailed me with my own dog to cover up your crimes? Tell them you used me for 3 years while you ran a criminal empire? His face twisted with rage. You set me up. We set you up, my mother said, standing. She walked around the table slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor until she was standing directly in front of Grant. You tried to seduce me 2 years ago, Grant, at my daughter's rehearsal dinner. You put your hand on my wrist and told me we could work together closely. Did you really think I would forget that? Did you really think I would let you destroy my daughter and walk away? Grant stared at her, hatred burning in his eyes, but he said nothing. The agent started leading him toward the door. As they passed me, one of them paused and looked down at Baxter, who was still sitting on the floor, confused and scared. Mrs. Ashford, the agent said quietly, I believe this belongs to you. He unclipped Baxter's leash from the chair and handed it to me. My dog launched himself into my arms, whining and licking my face and shaking with pure joy. I held him so tight I thought my ribs might crack. Tears poured down my face, but for the first time in weeks, they were not tears of sadness. They were relief. Grant was dragged out of the room, still shouting, still protesting, still refusing to accept that he had lost. Kellerman stood frozen, his face ashen. Mrs. Hartwell, I had no knowledge of any criminal activity. My mother did not even look at him. Save it for your own lawyer, Mr. Kellerman. You are going to need one. We walked out of that office with Baxter between us, his tail wagging, his head swiveling back and forth like he could not believe he was finally going home. As we stepped into the elevator, my mother looked at me. Are you all right? I nodded, tears still streaming down my face. Yeah, I think I am. She smiled, just a little. Good, because we have work to do. You are going to rebuild your life, Layla, and it is going to be better than anything you had before. 6 months later, I stood in the living room of my new apartment in Lincoln Park. It was smaller than the townhouse I had shared with Grant, cozier, but it was mine, completely, entirely mine. The walls were painted a soft sage green. I had furnished it with pieces I had chosen myself, a velvet couch in deep emerald, a vintage coffee table I had found at a flea market, shelves lined with books and plants and photographs. The space felt like me in a way the townhouse never had. Baxter was sprawled on the couch, snoring softly, his favorite stuffed duck tucked under his chin. He had gained weight since the divorce. He was happier. So was I. My laptop was open on the coffee table, a design proposal for a boutique hotel in River North glowing on the screen. My client list had tripled since the divorce. Word had spread that I was talented, professional, and most importantly, that I did not back down. My business was thriving in ways it never had when I was married. Grant was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole. His assets were seized to pay restitution to the investors he had defrauded. His reputation was destroyed. Tiffany Lawson had deleted all her social media accounts and disappeared the moment the news broke. Turns out love is not very strong when the money runs out and the cameras stop flashing. I had dinner with my mother every Sunday now. We did not talk about Grant. We did not need to. That chapter was closed, burned, buried. We talked about my business, about her company, about the future. For the first time in years, my relationship with my mother felt like a partnership instead of a disappointment. I had started dating again, tentatively. Nothing serious yet. A few coffee dates, a couple of dinners. One man, an architect named Daniel, who worked for a firm in the West Loop, had asked me out 3 times and I had said yes all 3 times. He was kind, funny, easy to talk to. He did not play games or send mixed signals or make me feel like I had to perform for his approval. When I told him on our second date that I was divorced and that my ex-husband was in federal prison, he had just nodded and said, "That must have been hard," and then changed the subject because he could tell I did not want to talk about it. It was refreshing, revolutionary even, the idea that I could date someone who just accepted me without needing to know every detail of my trauma. I was not ready for anything serious. Maybe I would never be ready, but I was learning what it felt like to be seen, to be valued, to be chosen not because of what I could give someone or who my family was or what I could do for their career, but because of who I was as a person. It felt strange, uncomfortable even, but also good. I looked at Baxter on the couch, his chest rising and falling with each breath, his paws twitching in his sleep like he was chasing something in a dream. I wondered what dogs dreamed about. Squirrels, probably, or bacon, or long walks in the park where no one ever yanked their leash or took them away from home. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from my mother. "Dinner Sunday? I found a new Italian place in Gold Coast that has excellent reviews." I smiled and texted back, "Yes, 7 p.m.? Perfect. Love you. Love you too." I set the phone down and looked around my apartment, at the soft green walls and the plants on the windowsill and the design books stacked on the shelves, at Baxter snoring on the couch, at the laptop with my hotel proposal glowing on the screen, at the framed photo on the mantle of me and my mother at a charity gala last month, both of us smiling, both of us free. This was my life now, small, quiet, mine. I thought about Grant sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. I wondered if he thought about me in that prison cell, if he regretted what he had done, if he understood, even now, that he had destroyed everything good in his life because he could not stop taking more than he deserved. Probably not. Men like Grant did not do regret. They just did blame. But that was not my problem anymore. I had learned something through all of this, something I wished I had understood years ago, back when I was 28 and desperate to believe that love could conquer anything if I just worked hard enough at it. Love is not about control. It is not about ownership or leverage or who holds the receipts. Love is not a transaction. It is not something you can buy or sell or trade or manipulate. Real love, the kind that matters, the kind that lasts, is about showing up, about being present, about protecting what matters even when it costs you everything. It is about fighting for the people and the things you care about, not because you own them, but because you cannot imagine a world without them. Grant thought he could use Baxter as leverage because he had a piece of paper with his name on it. But ownership is not about receipts or contracts or legal documents. Ownership is about who stays, who fights, who loves unconditionally even when the world is falling apart, who refuses to give up even when giving up would be easier. Baxter is mine because I chose him every single day, and he chose me back. That is what love is. That is what it has always been. I learned that karma does not forget. It does not rush. It does not make excuses or feel sympathy or give second chances to people who do not deserve them. But it always, always collects. And when it does, it collects in full, with interest. Grant thought he could take everything from me. My dog, my dignity, my sense of safety, my belief in love, my future. But all he did was show me who I really was underneath all the fear and self-doubt and need for approval. He showed me that I was someone stronger than I ever knew, someone capable of surviving the worst kind of betrayal and coming out the other side still standing, still fighting, still believing that good things were possible. I am not the same woman I was a year ago. I am not the woman who believed in fairy tales and second chances and the idea that love could conquer anything if you just tried hard enough. I am someone harder now, wiser, more careful, less willing to ignore red flags or make excuses for people who do not deserve them, less willing to make myself smaller to make someone else comfortable. But I am also someone kinder, to myself, to my dog, to the people who stood by me when everything fell apart. I have learned to ask for help, to accept support, to believe that I deserve good things, not because of what I achieve or how hard I work or how perfectly I perform, but simply because I exist. That is the gift Grant gave me, even though he never meant to. He broke me so completely that I had no choice but to rebuild myself from scratch. And when I rebuilt, I built something stronger, something that could not be shaken by someone else's lies or manipulation or cruelty. Baxter stirred on the couch and opened one sleepy eye. He looked at me, yawned, stretched, and then hopped down and padded over to where I was standing. He sat at my feet and looked up at me with those big, trusting brown eyes. I knelt down and scratched behind his ears, the spot that made his back leg twitch. "We are going to be okay, buddy," I whispered. "We are already okay." He licked my hand. And I believed it. For the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. Because I had learned that you do not need a perfect life to have a good life. You do not need a big house or an impressive title or a ring on your finger or someone else's approval. You just need to show up for yourself, to fight for what matters, to protect the people and things you love, to refuse to let someone else's cruelty turn you into something you are not. I had Baxter. I had my mother. I had my work. I had my little apartment with its sage green walls and morning coffee in the reading nook. I had Sunday dinners and design projects and coffee dates with kind men who did not play games. I had my life back, and that was everything. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories. See you next time.